Hey, what's up? It's Mr. Dean, and about 5 years ago I did a review of Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled that has since been unlisted because of how bad of a video it was. I hadn't even completed the story mode whenever I made that video. I really don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, I wanted to go ahead and rectify that today by taking another look at the game, so here we are. So let's start from the beginning. This is a remake of Crash Team Racing, originally released on the PlayStation in 1999, being developed by Naughty Dog. And as the name suggests, this is a racing game based on the acclaimed Crash Bandicoot series. I have never played the original game and I do not own it, so I really don't have anything to add about it. However, I am sure that one day I will make a separate video looking at it since it does look really intriguing. All you need to know is that it's a classic racing game with graphics that could certainly use a facelift, so facelift they would get. This came in the form of Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled in 2019, which also featured content from Crash Nitro Kart and Crash Tag Team Racing, so from a first glance this does kind of feel like the definitive kart racing Crash Bandicoot game. Once again, let me reiterate that I've never played any of the originals for these, so I am completely throwing a big ol' load of bullshit with that statement, but I don't know, it's a pretty good remake, that's all I know. This was also released on the PS4 and Xbox One at the time, but I opted to record this on the Switch, so that should probably be also kept in mind. And also, since I'm kind of a Mario Kart fanboy, I will be comparing CTR Nitro-Fueled to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe throughout the video. The reason I will be making that specific comparison is since they are on the same console and I really like both games. So time to get into my review and retrospective of Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled. So our general premise is similar to Mario Kart. Kind of. You are on a racetrack, there are 3 laps, you have items that you use, and there are more advanced mechanics such as drifting. But let's just say that here the gameplay experience is a little bit more zany. Also, there is a whole story mode akin to something like Diddy Kong Racing, which I have been saying for years how badly I want Mario Kart to have a story mode, so I guess that's 1 point for Crash Team Racing right there. I feel like the easiest way to go about this review is first going over the tracks themselves and the mechanics of how it works, and then going into the story and any other thoughts I have after that. Now, I got a lot of good things to say, but let me start this off with something that is immediately clear. Holy shit. The load times. Now maybe the load times are better on Xbox and PlayStation, I don't really know, but man they are long on the Switch. Especially going from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it takes noticeably longer on this game. After looking on a Reddit thread about this, someone mentioned it being due to the abundance of HD assets and other game design stuff that I am admittedly not super knowledgeable about. All I am going to say is that yeah, the graphics and assets are really cool and impressive, but at the same time Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is also incredibly gorgeous and fleshed out visually and it has none of these problems, so I don't know. Maybe it's just the optimization, especially since people apparently have bad load times on Xbox and PlayStation 2 from what I've read. And also, upon doing research, apparently Nitro-Fueled uses the frame rate to program how the acceleration works, which would also explain why even the next-gen versions of this game still run at 30 FPS. So for instance, increasing the frame rate would hence also affect how acceleration works, therefore giving players an advantage. I don't know since I am not knowledgeable on game development, these are just things I've read on the internet and I don't really have any legitimate professional opinions on these unfortunately. All I know is that the 30 frames per second gameplay doesn't really bother me, however the load times are certainly an occasional annoyance. Alright, enough of the negativity, let's get into the game itself. Spoiler alert, but the gameplay here is maybe better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Not even saying 8 Deluxe is bad gameplay, far from it, but it is designed with so much polish to where driving can feel too easy and brainless once you do it enough. The driving is very easy to get the hang of. As soon as you memorize how hard to drift on different turns and how to handle the mini turbos, it goes to autopilot pretty fast. Obviously that is assuming you're not a competitive online player, I am mainly talking about the single player modes. Now on Crash Team Racing, it is a completely different story. It is still simple to learn the basics, but mastering it has a huge skill ceiling. Basically, instead of drifting just involving jumping into a turn and releasing it whenever it's over, you can get 3 different boosts on each turn with a gauge where you need to time it properly in order to get the optimal boost each time. You can also drift and get turbos in off-road, which makes driving so much more fun. You aren't really confined to the road as much, which allows for more potential to do shortcuts, many of which are actually intended. Also, the items in this game were brutal. So the ability to do these shortcuts helps a ton with the playability in my eyes. Speaking of the items, how do they compare to Mario Kart's offerings? This debate is a little bit closer. A lot of the items in both games are kind of parallels to one another. The Turbo in Nitro-Fueled gives you a speed boost, much like the Mushroom in Mario Kart for example. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe does have significantly more, with there being 23 items in that game and only 11 in Nitro-Fueled. So I guess for that category, Mario Kart gets the edge, but it isn't really bad or anything in Crash Team Racing. There are also Wampa fruits, which are kind of like the equivalent of coins in Mario Kart. You can collect up to 10, however instead of increasing your speed, they increase the potency of your items. While playing, I hardly notice a difference between 0 and 10 Wampa fruits with the items. All I know is that the items in this game tend to be really brutal, so I don't really know how important collecting these are, to be honest. The biggest difference between Mario Kart and Crash Team Racing comes down to the tracks. Another interesting thing about the gameplay in this game is that after getting enough airtime on a jump, you get a speed boost whenever you land. This plays kind of similarly to tricking in Mario Kart, however the boosts you get in this game are way more extreme. Like, you can just combo mini turbos through drifts and basically be in a constant state of boosting everywhere, which is just so much fun. Now, there is nothing wrong with the designs for Mario Kart tracks. They fit those respective games' physics really well and I have a good time racing on them. However, playing this game, the tracks are filled with energy and excitement. I can't tell if it's always just the game itself controlling so much more fast pace, but the tracks genuinely felt more arcadey and insane. In a way, it feels like combining the speed and difficulty of F-Zero with the gorgeous visuals and charm of Mario Kart. Now let's go ahead and go through each track in the game and I will go over what my thoughts are. Our first track to look over is Crash Cove, and holy f***ing shit. This is right away such a good first track. There is a really cool shortcut you can do by timing your drift into this water and jumping at the right time in order to get into this little grass ledge. It isn't completely easy to do and it can be trapped with an item, and if you fail you can lose a lot of time, hence you smacking into the wall. I like how from up here you can go exploring on the ship for literally no reason, and I love it whenever tracks have these little things. Over on Mario Kart, Nintendo says f*** you for trying to drive to Peach's castle on Royal Raceway. Other than that, the track just plays really well and serves as a good, not too difficult, beginner-friendly course. I talked before on previous videos about incredibly designed intro levels in games like Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario 64, and this is no exception. They introduce you to how items work with the rows of item boxes, natural hazards with the water, and they keep the turns open enough to teach you easily how to drift. Next up we got Mystery Caves, which is meant to be a prehistoric cave filled with all sorts of, well, cavey things like stalagmites and lava and shit. From the original game, they added dinosaurs to really add to the theming, which was a pretty nifty addition. There are various waterways that have turtles which alternate lifting up their shells, acting as a ramp. This was really fun trying to time which one to take at a second's notice, which if you took the wrong one, it will cause you to lose a millisecond or two. I also like how there are various split paths in the track, some of which take in the form of narrow shortcuts, which is pretty solid. Also, the visuals are really dynamic, with it shifting between a cool blue cave and a lava-filled death pit. Next up is Super Speedway. This one pisses me the f*** off. Most of the track takes place with these little valley-shaped indentions in the road with barrels rolling up and down, and avoiding the barrels gives me a heart attack every single time. Hitting them flattens your car and slows you down, which is no fun. The rest of the track is pretty fun though. Well, the tiny portion of the beginning and the end, that is. Also, there's a pretty cool looking shortcut in the half-pipe area. Yeah, that is sick. Ruse Tubes is so sick. It takes on this really nice aquatic setting and all the turns are so much fun to drift around. I also love the final turn with the off-road shortcut, which you can just do shroomless via some well-timed mini turbos. To me, this feels like a pretty skill-based track, which of course I excelled at since I'm just that good, obviously. Next up is Slide Coliseum, and yeah, this one is completely flat and filled with turn after turn, which I guess can be kind of fun to drift around, but it's just really not that fun. The background does look kind of cool, but I feel like I really had to reach for that compliment since the same can be said for essentially any other track in the whole game. Like for instance, at one part there is a hologram of the different characters in the background, which I mean, that's cool. I don't know, aside from being able to jump over the tires on the sides of the road, not much is really happening here to keep me engaged. The one thing that I will say that is interesting is that there are no boost panels, which makes it so the track completely relies on power sliding. This ends up making the track feel more based on mechanics and not as quick rapid fire pace as the rest of the game, which I will appreciate it in that regard. And unfortunately we got another track just like this right after called Turbo Track, which just so happens to be significantly worse. Now we got several straight 180-degree turns, which I will praise the track design in this game, but come on, this is just not fun or engaging. Once again, the track looks perfectly fine visually, let's just move on. Moving on to another beginner-friendly course, we have Coco Park, which is themed off of the character Coco Bandicoot. We had Crash Cove before, which was a really good beginner-friendly course, and it was better in every single way. Like, Coco Park is solid, I guess, but it is extremely linear in comparison. Visually, this is sublime, especially compared to the original version, however, I really don't care for this one. Once again though, this looks absolutely fire, especially the grass cave area, it's so stunning. Tiger Temple is an interesting track themed around a dark jungle ruin area, and I dig it quite a bit. I like the aesthetic of the stormy atmosphere in combination with the dark grass everywhere. Little details like animals running around on the bridges above the track is really dope. The layout is fine. It is a glorified oval which works, but it definitely isn't my favorite. At one part there's also a wall that can lower with a bomb, doing so turns it into a nice little shortcut which is pretty sick. Now the problem with the layout that I do have is that the insides of the temple are way too fucking skinny. There are fire spewers on the sides, but you have so little room to avoid it. Other than that, I think that the track is acceptable driving wise, definitely carried by the gloomy visuals for me. Papu's Pyramid is another track that I just can't really bring myself to like over two things. One is this stupid part with 90-degree turn after 90-degree turn, and the road is so narrow here that it is aggravating. And two is that there are constantly these man-eating plants that if you get captured by them, you lose so much time and it actually drives me insane. The track has really cool theming and everything, being based on levels directly from Crash Bandicoot, but like I just can't really enjoy playing on this one that much. I will say though, we have another really fire shortcut on this one. And next up is Dingo Canyon, which is good I guess. I mean, some of the turns are way too constricting, but it is definitely less problematic on this track than a course like Papu's Pyramid, so it doesn't really detract from the overall experience that much. Visually, it looks incredible as usual. Honestly, it makes me feel like I am on some crazy road trip gone rogue or something. It is pretty difficult, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes pretty satisfying to zip around. Alright, going to a bit of a colder climate now, we got Polar Pass, which I find pretty fun. We got some really satisfying shortcuts to pull off here, whether that being the one over the lake via the boost panel or jumping over the turn sign a bit later in the track. I mean, I feel like I tend to like Arctic themed tracks, and this one is no exception. The only part of this track I don't really appreciate is the 2 consecutive roundabouts, since drifting on it is way too tight, but overall really fun track. Tiny Arena is the Crash Team Racing response to the misery that was Wario Stadium in Mario Kart 64, and I mean, yeah, it's better. Not a whole lot better since these long stadium tracks just do nothing for me. This game playing way more fast paced definitely helps it not be a total drag, but like essentially every track in this game is preferable to play on in my opinion, so yeah. Dragon Mines is kind of similar to Wario's Gold Mine to me, except just slightly less memorable. Visually this one is top notch, as is everything in this game. Just like the previous track, there is just one turn that pisses me the f off and makes me want to sell my copy of the game, and that's the harsh boardwalk turn. Everything else is alright though. And we got our other Arctic track with Blizzard Bluff, and yeah, this is one of the best tracks in the whole game. The turns are all so much fun to drive on and perfectly mesh with this game's physics. There are some really fun shortcuts here, as any good track should have, especially the one where you boost through the off-road and hop over the fence. I love how easy it is to mess up the timing here, and doing so results in a lot of lost time. This just happens to be one of the track layouts from this game that has held up its potency regardless of the amount of times I have played it. Apparently there are some people that don't like this track, and man, why can't I ever agree with everybody? Yeah, the boulders are a little bit too unpredictable, but I don't know, this one's just a lot of fun. At this point, we start getting into the genuinely difficult tracks, and that begins with Hot Air Skyway. This one is not messing around at all, taking place way up in the mystical Crash Bandicoot skies. I love the mellow orange aesthetic of the background for some reason, it just looks so wholesome. Now what isn't wholesome is the f***ery going on with this layout. Some of these turns are just brutal, but you know what, to me it's the fun kind of brutal. Like this gives me Rainbow Road vibes above anything else in the game. Cortex Castle is another classic from this game that I can't help but feels a little bit overrated. The visuals are fantastic and it is very memorable, but there is just this stupid shortcut that leads to this feeling very broken of a track. If you know how to do the shortcut every lap, then you basically just win, at least from my experience. Like I said at the beginning of the video too, this is probably more of a problem in single player since the computers don't really do it, and online I'm sure a lot of people do it, but you know. whatever. I think if it was harder to do the shortcut, then maybe, but as soon as you nail down the timing of your boost and jump, then it's basically a wrap at that point. Other than that, really fun track. I love driving on this one. I especially have fond memories of playing the custom track variation of this in Mario Kart Wii. And yet another classic is Engine Labs, and this is yet another one with a really good port and custom track form on Mario Kart. Now this one is definitely not for the faint-hearted with the amount of absolute gnarly 90-degree turns it has. Thankfully, unlike Papu's Pyramid, I think the 90-degree turns are actually, you know, fun. Plus the whole radioactive aesthetic is really cool and not something that is played out in racing games that often. And that concept is easy to look really ugly visually, and here it looks great, so props to the developers for that. The only part that I find questionable is this weird blue psychedelic tunnel that you drive through, because just like, why? This could be some really cool reference to Crash Bandicoot, I don't know, but it wouldn't change the fact that it is hideous. Finally, for the regular courses, we have Oxide Station, and what a midway to end it off. This isn't even bad, but it's just so meh. The layout is just really convoluted and forgettable the whole way through. It also feels like it drags on more than basically any other track in the whole game. So that is all for the tracks from the original Crash Team Racing game, and now we get a load of tracks from Crash Nitro Kart and some other bonus courses, so time to go through those now. First up is Inferno Island, which is very similar in a lot of ways to Crash Cove. In the original game it was daytime, which was then changed to a nighttime theme, likely in order to differentiate the two tracks better. Also there is a volcano section, hence the Inferno Island name. The layout is alright, but nothing really special. I think overall Crash Cove is a more fun and exciting track to race on, but this one is still pretty solid. Next up is Jungle Boogie, which is easily one of the best tracks in the entire game. The aesthetic is absolutely breathtaking to look at, especially the ending section where you are just zipping around through the trees. In a way, this one reminds me of Wild Woods from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is also my favorite track from that game, so that is quite the compliment. Clockwork Wampa is up next, and as far as clock theme tracks go, TikTok Clock has just set the bar so high up that this one is just a little bit weak in comparison. The gears acting as obstacles on the side of the road are cool I suppose, but the constant hard right angles right after ramps makes it kind of unpredictable of a layout for new racers, so this definitely isn't one of the strongest courses in the game. Next up is Android Alley, and this is certainly one of the racetracks of all time. I genuinely have very little to say about this. Like, there is one part where a train drives straight down the middle of the road, which is cool. That's about it. I completely forgot this course even existed. It's fine I guess, but definitely nothing special. Next. Electron Avenue is up next, which specifically reminds me of a Mario Kart Wii custom track or a Metropolis with the whole futuristic aesthetic. This one was pretty memorable with its absolutely massive jump at the beginning, which is so satisfying to go down. Also, I like how some of the straightaways have these electric walls that switch height in order to make the racer need to quickly react in order to not get stung. I think that's a pretty cool gameplay component, and with the visuals, I would say that this is a pretty good course. Deep Sea Driving takes us deep sea driving. Wow, my writing is f***ing bad. This one has really good visuals, especially whenever you go through the tube. Drifting on it is just so satisfying. The next track, Thunderstruck, is another one of my personal favorites. Something about the way driving on this one feels is so fast-paced and fun. Also, the color palette here just really meshes well with this game's art style. Another pretty mid one is up next with Tiny Temple, just a complete shrug. Once again, I just kind of forgot this track existed. It's fun I guess, but it's just not very memorable. And another mid one is Meteor Gorge. Literally nothing special about the layout of this one, it is kind of painfully uneventful. It's fine, but it's just the definition of average. Finally, we get back on track with Barren Ruins, which is a pretty fun one. I like this half-pipe section with the boost panels, and once again we have another tube section. I am noticing a bit of a trend of tracks having tubes and me being pleasantly satisfied. We got another time-themed track with Out of Time, and I think this time around it takes the concept a little bit more creatively. We are in an abandoned wasteland for the setting and it fits pretty well. I like the track quite a bit. Nearing the end of the Crash Nitro tracks, we got Assembly Lane. This one is another alright track that isn't really anything too special. I like the whole mechanical factory inspired design, that part is pretty cool. The layout is okay but nothing really special. Finally, to put an end to the Crash Nitro Kart tracks, we got Hyper Spaceway. This is one of the stronger tracks in our long review of the tracks in this game, with it having two of my favorite things, tubes and big jumpy jumps. and it takes place in space, and I tend to like that setting too. Now the downside is that this is a significantly downsized version of the original, which thankfully, since I never played it on Crash Nitro Kart, I didn't notice this until doing research. I don't have nostalgia with the original, and therefore I can't really be disappointed by this, so I like it. And finally, we have an additional handful of bonus tracks, so I guess fuck it, let's go through these as well, because why the f not? Twilight Tour is a really good track, taking on a deserty pyramid design, and it looks awesome. It is pretty fun to drive on, especially rapidly doing mini turbos on the straightaways. Next up is Prehistoric Playground, which is already one of those tracks that I enjoyed the most in the whole game. The whole dinosaur inspired thing we got going on is absolutely stunning, and it is definitely one of my favorite courses to look at. You can even get big jumps off of some of the tails, which is pretty cool. Spyro's circuit unfortunately kind of shits on the parade, with the visuals being a little ugly at times. Specifically inside of the castle, everything is so red that I kind of hate looking at it. The track would probably be fine without this issue, but I don't know, it just does not click whatsoever visually. Nina's Nightmare is supposed to be a super spooky track or whatever the f. Nightmare is a big fucking overstatement, I won't lie. As for the track itself, it got a couple overly tight turns, but all in all, it's pretty fun. Driving inside the mansion was fun with its crazy driving on the walls vibe, it's pretty nice. May not be my favorite haunted track of all time, but it's passable. Koala Carnival kind of broke all odds and was one of my favorite tracks in the whole game while being a fucking straight up oval. This was just so much fun to drive on. There were jumps all over the place, including another big one at the beginning. And visually, this is so colorful and vibrant, I love it. Apparently the track is super glitchy after looking into how the community feels about it, and I don't know, maybe, but as a casual player I had fun with it. Gingerbread Joyride would be really cool as a festive track if it was like December or something. It's early May as I'm writing this. I don't know, it's cool and fun or whatever, I just like most of the other tracks more. Mega Mix Mania is pretty difficult and features more absolutely massive jumps, and finally let's end this thing with Drive Through Danger. Holy shit, I f***ing hate this shit. Just look at the minimap with how many obnoxiously hard turns there are. The visuals are fine, but f*** man, the layout is obnoxious. And finally, after the onslaught of tracks, we got our battle mode, which to be honest, I rarely really dabble with the battle modes in racing games, but let's see what we're working with here. We got 5 different modes with adjustable settings and a pretty solid assortment of battle arenas. I won't review all of them since I need a breather from the track reviewing, but let's talk about these modes. We got a Capture the Flag mode, which in concept is really cool, and in actuality, I just don't think that this really fits. I don't know, with the way racing games controls, this just kind of felt off. Half the time I couldn't even tell where the flag was. I'm sure if I was like really locked in with some other people, this would be a lot more fun. By the way, I recorded these alone, which definitely is not how battle mode is supposed to be experienced. Crystal Grab felt like the equivalent of coin runners from Mario Kart. We got an assortment of crystals, and the goal is to collect as many as you can. The catch is that you can spew items at each other in order to collect other crystals and make them lose them. This one was just really solid, just as it is in Mario Kart. Last Kart driving is like Balloon Battle in Mario Kart. You have a specific level of lives, and each time you get hit by an item, you lose one. Get this, the last one standing wins. Holy shit. Limit Battle is basically whoever gets the most kills in a time limit, or who hits a specific amount of kills first. This one was fun, but I would rather just play Last Kart Driving or Crystal Grab over this, to be honest. And finally, Steal the Bacon with some variation of Capture the Flag, where there were no teams and it's just a free-for-all. Once again, not one of my personal favorites. Overall, the modes were fun, I guess, but I am playing this game for the racing, not the battling. Sorry, not sorry. I can't believe it took this long into the video to talk about the story mode, because yeah, this game has one. As for the plot we got, well, it's just as campy as I would have wanted it to be. Earth is invaded by nitrous oxide, a racer who claims to be the fastest racer in the galaxy. Sure, buddy. So yeah, basically we can traverse around a hub world that is split apart into separate areas, all of them being interconnected. Honestly, this was a really cute gameplay component, but occasionally I will say it got a little bit annoying trying to navigate it all, since I wouldn't know where specifically each separate area of levels were. So what do you do in the story mode specifically? Well, each area has 4 or so tracks in it that you can drive up to each one to be transported into it. First you complete a race on each one, but then you can go back after all of the races are completed and complete 2 different challenges. One is the CTR challenge, where you need to drive through the whole thing collecting 3 letters, that being CT and R, and they are placed in very sneaky spots. The catch is that you also need to come in first place while collecting all 3 letters, and this is a very well designed mode. Making it so the racer still has to win a race is so genius and makes it so much more engaging than a normal race. Also, the letter letters would in some cases be in very bizarre locations. Take for instance in Mystery Caves where one of the letters was in the lava section, but the problem is that it was in midair and blended in with the background because everything else was of the same palette, so yeah, this one took me a while to find. There was also the Relic Race mode where the timer would count up until you finished 3 laps and you needed to finish all of them in a specific time. Well, there are also a bunch of little icons with numbers of them throughout the track, each correlating to an amount of seconds that could be frozen on the timer in order to help you out. This mode was fun and creative, but I think the game was too generous with the amount of time you needed to complete the courses in. And then also each zone in the story mode had a crystal challenge which took you to one of the battle arenas and gave you a time limit to collect an assortment of crystals. This on the other hand was very difficult. I think I only got one of these on the first try. Also, a couple of times you would have a boss level where you need to beat a character while it spams items behind it on the track, and although I got through them, they certainly annoyed me. Also in the story mode, there is a classic mode and a brand new mode with new difficulty settings and allowing you to change your character and card selection during the story mode itself. And then as for other modes that we had in the game, we have a ring rally mode which from what I gathered was added in as an update. This had a similar premise to Relic Race, except now the timer is continuously coming down and we have to complete as many laps as we can. We also go through rings in order to briefly freeze the timer, and each lap gets faster and faster. This was alright, but not really exciting enough to make me continuously play it over and over. Also, we got the online mode, which to be honest I was expecting to not find a lobby, but nope, I found a lovely other contestant to race against. The connection worked pretty well too, even for me with my subpar Wi-Fi. And you also may notice that you get Wampa coins at the end of racing or doing the mini modes. These can be spent at the pit stop on car points and of course, this game had to be bitten by the microtransaction bug. Yeah, you can buy Wampa coins with real money in the Nintendo eShop or whatever platform you are playing on. You also can get these by doing challenges too, so you can let loose going for those. And with all that, that is Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled. So all in all, I think that this really begs the question, is this really on par with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe like a lot of people say it is? To me personally, it is kind of difficult to really equate these two games despite being in the same genre. They have really different gameplay and graphical styles for starters. Mario Kart 8 has a much more polished and high fidelity design, while CTR Nitro-Fueled looks way more cartoony and playful. If I had to choose one graphically, I would probably say Mario Kart, but not by much. I love them both, this is just me and my personal preference. Now gameplay, this gets a lot more complex. Each game has its facets that it has the advantage in. Mario Kart has the smoother gameplay, better item selection, a much larger pool of tracks, my favorite soundtrack of any racing game, and a better battle mode. And with 200cc, Mario Kart better replicates the fast-paced gameplay of Nitro-Fueled. However, Nitro-Fueled does have a story mode, better side modes, a better drifting system, and probably the better vehicle customization system. In Nitro-Fueled, there are just so many different skins for basically everything vehicle related. So really, which game is better just comes down to the individual. Some people may disagree with my dissections of which game does which thing better, and that is completely fine. But I honestly can't really pick one game over the other. Both of these are so much fun to play through and have their own pros and cons over each other. At the very least, I would say both of these are must-owns in the racing game genre. And after playing Nitro-Fueled, I also would love to go back and play the original game and see what I've been missing out on in order to further appreciate the remake. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching. As always, peace out.